I'm going to tell you how to make crunchy beer bread. First, preheat your oven to 370 Fahrenheit, 190 Celsius. To a mixing bowl, add 3 cups of flour, all-purpose flour. Please make sure you fluff your flour with a fork before scooping it to make sure it's not too compact as you're scooping. You don't want to accidentally overmeasure. Next, you will add 3 teaspoons of baking powder. Please make sure it's baking powder, not baking soda. They do different things. After you've added 1, 2, and 3 teaspoons of baking powder, you are going to then add 1 teaspoon of table salt. 1. Mine was a little scant, so I added a pinch more. For beer bread, you can have 1 to 3 tablespoons of sugar, depending on how sweet you like your bread and how sweet your beer is. We prefer ours to be on the more savory side, so for my recipe, I usually only add 1 tablespoon of sugar. And 1. You will need to melt 1/2 cup of butter. I usually melt mine in the microwave, so yes, it sounds like a lot of butter, but it is worth it. So make sure you take your 1/2 butter, 1/2 cup of butter, and melt it for 30-second intervals. You don't want to have your butter explode. Here's mine in my favorite mug. There's no place like foam. My good friend Katie gave it to me. She is a sweet girl. Absolutely adore her. As your butter is melting, you will need to go ahead and mix your dry ingredients quite thoroughly together. Make sure you keep an eye out for your butter, again, so it doesn't explode in your microwave. You may need to stop it every few seconds to give it a stir. Sorry for all the random background noise. Now my butter was unsalted, so I'm adding just a pinch of salt to my butter because I do prefer to use salted butter for this recipe. I think it tastes a lot better. You will not be mixing this butter into the batter, okay? So next you will add your beer. My can is about 16 ounces. I think a standard US can is 12 to 13 ounces. I usually like to pour a little first because it gets so foamy, and I'll work that in really, really well before I start adding more beer into the bread. Now, don't be afraid of over mixing this or anything like that. If you're using a fork like I am, you're not really going to have that issue. I do have a stand mixer and a hand mixer, but for whatever reason, I always prefer the fork method. I think it's just the little old lady in me, to be honest. I do also prefer to use a glass measuring bowl for this because I have a hard time telling if I got all the flour mixed in. So I will periodically lift up my bowl and check underneath it to make sure I got everything very thoroughly mixed. Now, this is going to be a wet batter bread, so the batter is pourable. So don't worry about kneading or letting it rest or anything like that. It's not that kind of bread. Okay, here I am just adding the last bit of beer in. And checking to make sure I got all those little spots, scraping the sides. For my baking dish, I am going to use a glass baking dish, a glass bread pan. I like using the glass ones because I know it can withstand the heat and the frying of the bread. So once your batter is thoroughly mixed, you'll take your pan. In a minute, she's still mixing. Look at her go. Oh my God, it's good, Rachel. Stop. Just stop mixing. It's fine. Lord have mercy. There she goes. So pour it straight into your pan, ungreased, unfloured, unbuttered. You don't need any of that. You're adding a lot of butter to the top of this. So what's going to happen is once you've poured all of your batter in, Scrape every last bit you can. Try not to waste any of it. Once you have poured all of your batter in, you're going to take your melted butter and pour it right on top of the batter. Again, it's very important you do not mix your butter into your batter. You are frying the bread in the pan. This is what it looks like about 30 minutes in. Oh, apparently the clip of me pouring the butter on top got lost. Anyway, you'll pour the butter on top. Don't mix it in. This is 30 minutes in the oven. Here's it out of the oven. Look at all that butter. As it cools, the butter will soak into the bread. Your bread should temperature around 190 to 200 degrees if you're not sure if it's done, but it will be golden brown and firm to the touch. Here's it cooled. It is very crunchy. I tried cutting it with one hand, which was a really, really bad idea. Don't ever do that. I accidentally deleted the audio for this part, so I do apologize. But it is tasty. I didn't wait for mine to finish cooling, so it was a little more challenging to pull out of the pan. The first slice is always the hardest anyways, but the bread is very chewy and bouncy, the crust is crunchy, and as the days go on, the butter will help loosen the bread more from the pan, and it is a winner. It makes all beer taste good. If you ever have a beer you just do not like, make this recipe. This is what we use this recipe for all the time. It is so tasty. I highly, highly recommend it.